Hello, everyone. Once again, welcome to another episode of Second to Saints. John Hendricks alongside Ross Jackson. It's day 17 of Saints training camp, Thursday. One more practice until we get, no more practices in Cali. It'll be a preseason game in San
Right.
Francisco. Ross, I'd ask how you're doing, which I always do, but let's talk some people down off the ledge about this Justin Simmons
Yeah,
stuff.
it feels like
Obviously,
where
it's a
we should
big
start.
deal signing with the Falcons. And look, it's a good
Mhm.
look for them because they just traded for Matthew Judon, but now they
Right.
got Justin Simmons. They have Jesse Bates back there. That's a legitimate
Yep.
secondary. Raheem Morris is a defensive minded coach, but people are really, 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 really losing their mind. What can you say
Yeah.
about it?
Yeah. I mean, look, the thing that I continuously say on this, and you and I, John, said this. I said this on Locked On Saints. You wrote about this. The Saints didn't pursue Justin Simmons because they felt like their safety room was in trouble. They didn't pursue Justin Simmons because of the fact that they felt that they needed a new safety there. Like they're perfectly happy with Jordan Howden. They're perfectly happy with Jonathan Abram. They just want one of those guys to win the spot, of course. So the Saints didn't go from being a good secondary to being a bad secondary because they didn't add somebody. What they
Yeah,
lost was the opportunity to go from a good secondary to a great secondary, right? We would have been talking about them as if they were one of the best secondaries in
right.
the NFL if you add Justin Simmons in. But they didn't all of a sudden get worse because they didn't add Justin Simmons. They just got worse than what their potential could have been with the addition. So the way that I look at this is it's a miss for the New Orleans Saints, but now you just go back to square one at the position. And maybe now you start to focus a little bit more on your offensive line and see what you're able to get done there. Not that pursuing a safety precludes you from also being able to pursue an offensive line situation there. But it's a miss. It happened. It stinks. It stings even more that he ends up going to a division rival. But does it mean that the New Orleans Saints are in trouble? No, because that's not the way we were talking about it before they added Justin Simmons. I don't know why we would talk about it that way after they added Justin Simmons or didn't add
Yeah,
Justin.
I think what's hard is because the Saints had all the connections here, right? Like Marcus
Right.
Robertson, Joe Woods. There's so many player connections and all this other stuff, and then people look at the money. 7.5 million guaranteed, 8 million total, and maybe the Saints weren't wanting to pay that. You know what I mean? I guess that's
Right.
kind of where it is, and maybe if it was a case where they had a set number in mind, I guess where it comes into play is that back when if you follow the breadcrumbs March they or after the draft, they're having these talks. They were kind of off on the figures. It was reported he wanted a multi-year deal. Then they meet
Mm-hmm.
again, and it sounded like they were closer. And then, it didn't seem like it after he visited the Falcons that they're pretty hungry. And I mean, I credit to them. They're making moves to try to be better. But look, I'm with you. They need somebody to take that safety spot next to Tyron, right? It would have taken him to the next level, in my opinion. But
Mm-hmm.
again, great opportunity for Jordan Howden, extremely great opportunity for Jonathan Abram and Will Harris. I think that those three are playing pretty well out there. It's just that the talent between those guys, with all respect to them, what you get into Justin Simmons versus what you get with these guys at this moment, at least on paper, it seems better, obviously, going with Simmons, but you're right. There's needs on the offensive line. Like this right tackle situation has got to get figured out. They took another injury today. Taliese Fuaga has
Mm-hmm.
back tightness. Tried to give it a go. Like again, they just cannot stay healthy for the life of everything. And so they put Landon Young at left tackle. It's just it's tough because I think the more pressing need is at right tackle. It's on the offensive line because that's where they need to be solid. But again, it's a bummer, but it's also one of those moves that we're gonna wait and see how the season plays out, and then we'll really know. It's like, okay, they made the right move or they didn't make the right move.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the biggest thing is how do you find with Jordan Howden, Jonathan Abram, Will Harris, how do you find the right complement to Tyrann Mathieu? If you look at Tyrann Mathieu and Jordan Howden's distribution in terms of what they were asked to do last year, dropping deep into the middle of the field, dropping to the boundary, playing in the box, all those other things, they were pretty much the same. Um, Tyrann was more of a middle of the field safety, while Abram was a little more of like a little more of a boundary guy, everything like that. But that was the role that he was asked to play, stepping in place of Marcus May for all those games. Whereas when you got to the end of the season last year, which we know that the Saints loved what they saw from Tyrann Mathieu and Jonathan Abram together at the end of the season, it was a little bit more Jonathan Abram playing down in the box and then Tyrann Mathieu playing deep in the middle of the field. And so if you find the right complement, which could mean that you just go to Jonathan Abram to do that again, or as the Saints have been working on this offseason, you continue to train up Jordan Howden to be able to do both, right? Drop back into coverage and play down in the box. Then you're achieving something there. The Saints are not in need of a deep safety. They like Tyrann Mathieu in that role. It played 65% of his snaps, I believe it was last year, drop into the middle of the field and either cover 3 or cover 1. And so with all that, all you're trying to do is find the right guy to complement. And so if you're able to find or train up the right guy to complement, or you get a guy like Will Harris who can play deep safety, box safety, slot, corner, quarterback. I'm just kidding. But like, can play all over the defense there, defensive secondary. Like there's value that you can get from a player like him in this situation too. So yeah, I think they're going to be fine. All that it does is put them right back to where they already were. And they lose out on a lot of potential. There's no doubt about that. They lose out on a ton of potential. But I don't think the Saints are going to be shaken by this at all because they probably looked at that situation. I would imagine that $7.5 million guaranteed was too much for the Saints to go to and offer when they have 3 other safeties. They feel like they could probably start at that spot next to Tyrann Mathieu already. And so I imagine they were probably going for, it couldn't have been a difference of a couple $1 million because typically you won't haggle over that. So I would say they were probably looking at like a deal that was guaranteed lower, but then had incentives on top of it to get to a certain spot, which is kind of what you and I discussed would probably be the case. But whatever it was that they wanted to do, it had to be at least somewhat underneath the $7.5 million guaranteed line.
Yeah. And look, I think that, you look at this, I guess when you look at the safety group, first of all, the way they played, something to point out that Tyrann had said is that their communication, him and Jonathan Abrams, was like 100. You know what I'm saying? Like they had good communication going on. That's why you saw some of the good play against the Bucks and some of the games that we had. And so I think that's what we need to keep in mind here, that that's what we're expecting to see, and communication is key for it. And Abrams been here, Howden's been here, Harris has been here all offseason, and I get Simmons is a very talented free agent and a very talented safety, I guess, if you will. And so, I mean, he could have came in here and learned it quickly too. But at the same time, again, it's unfortunate. But if they had signed him, it would have been awesome. But they had $14.2 million the other day. The restructure of Pete Werner bumped up a little bit, or like gave him a little less. I think it was like $1 million or something like that.
It was like 13.1 by the time it was all said and done.
Yeah, and you're gonna have to kind of need some money during the season, especially if this right tackle thing doesn't go why you need it. And the Falcons had done some restructuring to make some room and stuff like that. And look, Terry Fontenot, Ryan Pace, everybody will hopefully remember them from their days at the Saints and stuff. And so they're kind of on that same wavelength of where New Orleans operates. And so, I mean, Kirk Cousins is the one that's going to have to prove themselves, right? You know what I mean? I think that's where Atlanta is. But, again, it's a thing. It's said, it's done. Build a bridge, move on. New Orleans, they can't get Justin Simmons now, right? And so they're going to move on with their plan, what they got, and the guys that they have in the building. And look, they were, like you said, they were good before any of all this happened. So we're going to see, because again, hindsight's 2020. We'll find out who's laughing at the end of the day. Hopefully it's the Saints, but we don't know. Day 17 action. I guess let's hit on the big one, right? Is Taliese Fuaga, the back tightness. He kind of tried to go out there, do some stretches. Kind of saw him a little bit in, walkthroughs, a couple of different things, and it just couldn't go. And so the encouraging thing is that Dennis Allen said if he's healthy, he's going to play on Sunday, right? So I think that's the only thing that I feel really encouraged about. But, you're starting right tackle's having issues. You're starting left tackle just got hurt. Cesar Ruiz got hurt yesterday, but he was good to go today. I mean, it was just a minor scare, but this is a team that just cannot take an injury at this particular spot. Like, they cannot afford to lose any of their starters right now. And I keep saying, like, I've said this so many times on the pod, that it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, because you don't have a starting 5 offensive line that goes the distance. They got to have a solid
Right.
contingency plan. And so I don't know that we have that, but Fuaga, are you as worried as some people are right now?
I don't know at the moment. I would love to say, hey, back tightness, that's not too big of a deal. That'll be okay and everything like that. But then we've also seen back tightness hold Alvin Kamara out of practice all week this week so far and everything. So I don't really know. I won't really know how to feel about it until we get back out there for day 18 on Friday and then get a better understanding of, if is he out there or not. I don't know where to go with this, because so many times we've heard, oh, this isn't that serious or whatever. And then like guys go to injured reserve, or like this situation to where, it's precautionary, but that it becomes precautionary for like a week, everything like that. So it's so hard to gauge a little bit of like what the real expectations are around some of these injuries and stuff like that. And that's fine. Like, that's just part of the game of football. You never really know. Like, I give Dennis Allen a lot of credit for always reminding people that like there's varying grades of these soft tissue injuries, for instance, where it's like, okay, it's a hamstring injury, but that doesn't mean that this guy with a hamstring injury and that guy with a hamstring injury are going to be on the exact same timeline. They might be on entirely different timelines. And so like, it's so hard to gauge, because I imagine you could say the same thing with back tightness, because look, back tightness in a running back, obviously cause for concern, but back tightness in an offensive lineman might even be more concerning and things like that, to where you don't want that injury to become something that ends up turning into an actual back injury and then ends up sidelining him for who knows how long. So you have to play it safe. I wouldn't be surprised at this point, just seeing how precautious the Saints have been so far over the course of this offseason. I wouldn't be surprised to not see Taliese Fuaga on Friday out there on the field, and to potentially not see him against the San Francisco 49ers on Sunday. I think he's solidified. He's your starting left tackle. He has nothing left to prove. Getting him the reps are good, don't get me wrong, but not at the expense of potentially losing him for a longer term due to a more serious injury.
Yeah, you read my mind. I was going to ask if you've seen enough from him in training camp, which I would agree. I've seen plenty from Taliese. I don't necessarily need to see much more for him, and I feel like he's going to be solid, right? I mean, I've seen him go up against Chase Young, who again is just a terror on the defensive line. Like, I hope he gets like 15 sacks this year. I don't know if that's realistic, but double-digit sacks. Like, he's just been hitting another level, and I love the jabbing between him and Foster Moreau today. Like, he was made it a point to say, "Look, I had 3 today," you know what I mean, and stuff like that. But I guess where I was going is I think I've seen enough from Fuaga. I feel like the back tightness, and everybody's got to remember, everybody's body is different. Like, you suffer one injury. I mean, I don't think all injuries heal the same way, like they do, but your body has to be able to put itself back together too. So again, that's medical talk, but I feel like for Fuaga, I've seen enough, you know what I mean? Like, in the sense of, okay, let's not rush him back. I don't think I need to see him. Like, the game reps are going to be great, right? But if he's not good to go tomorrow, Friday's practice, let's be precautionary, which they have been. Like, Paulson Adebo was one, Shaheed was another one. And so they are being precautious on some of those things. And so, look, I'm okay with that. And so, but at the same time, another injury to this offensive line is not going to work. It's just not going to work. And look, I think overall, as we jump into the day, it was a kind of a struggle for the offense at first in some of the down and distance that they're working on. But once they moved into red zone, I think they obviously hit another level, and that in the game sequence, they definitely found what they needed to, although it didn't look like it was going to end well at first. But that's why they play the game. What was kind of some of your overall first impressions of day 17?
Yeah, I thought Derek Carr had a day that started kind of like in the dumps and then ended up just kind of skyrocketing. I mean, you and I were wowed by one of the throws that he made in red zone. It was this quick slant or whatever. I don't actually know what route it was. I think it was a slant, either a slant, a dig, whatever it was, in the back of the end zone to Dallin Holker. And he had to drill it in between 2 closing defenders. And I'll borrow your phrase, because I think your phrase was most appropriate. Threaded the needle, as John said to me after the throw, to Dallin Holker, who, by the way, like, Dallin Holker again, like making more plays in the first team and all these other things, like good stuff from him. But I just thought that throw from Derek Carr was outstanding. Just a really incredible throw. And I think that like that, and then the Rashid Shaheed connection that he had in that same drive, that same part of the drill, just really kind of like bolstered his confidence a little bit. And then all of a sudden, like things kind of took off for him from there.
Yeah, I mean, again, he finished well. I mean, he ended up throwing 3 touchdowns in the red zone. He got the one at the end, to Foster Moreau, who got the other touchdown in red zone with the shovel pass, if you will. And so, again, I think he made some real crisp throws. Again, it was not without blemish, right? There still were a couple of times where the protection broke down. They had a false start. Bob Means was running with the first team, and he had a false start on one of the team plays and stuff. So, again, it was better. I didn't notice Trevor Penning as much as I normally do. And again, we're not trying to pick on him or anything. There was a couple times where you saw him get beat, right? Granderson, but Carl Granderson is a pretty big beast, but I don't know that I would say he had a bad day, right? Maybe it was an even kill day, if you will. But yeah, I think the way Derek Carr played out there is responded after the early struggles, and look, credit to the defense too. Like, they had a pass breakup at the line of scrimmage on what was the first play, or not the first play, but one of the first plays in one of those drills. Yeah. And you saw Cam Jordan getting after it, getting some sack inside. That was really good to see. And so I just feel like we've seen a couple things here and there. The only thing I didn't particularly care for is that throw to Chris Olave near the sideline, because it looked like that was a pretty tough fall for him. And so, again, I'm not putting that on Carr. I'm not putting that on Shamar Jean-Charles. It's just how that happened. And so that's the only thing I didn't like really from what we saw out there.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. I think we've seen a couple of those from Derek Carr too. And maybe it's the one thing that I've been kind of most concerned about with him so far is, there's still those throws where, a player is flying down the left or right sideline and then is having to work back to the ball. And it's underthrown or things like that. And look, I don't know. Sometimes you place it there on purpose to try to get the receiver to come back, fight through the contact, and maybe draw a DPI or something like that. So some of it might be strategic. But I mean, in those moments where you're forcing your wide receiver to come back and leap, get off of his feet like that, there's just a lot of things that can go wrong. In that type of an environment and that type of a throw. So that's the one thing that maybe has kind of irked me the most or concerned me the most watching Derek Carr's play so far through training camp, is that we've seen quite a few of those. I'd like to see that ball out ahead of the receiver, giving him the opportunity to go and get it. You have the rest of the end zone. You have another 10 yards of end zone to try to get the ball out in front of him, things like that. And I get that it's not always realistic. I understand that. You just want to give your guy an opportunity to go one-on-one. But then if nothing else, you got to get the ball out early or something like that. I don't know. There's a lot of reasons why that could be a thing. But it hasn't worked. If they are trying it on purpose, it's not working. And so maybe time to look at another way to deliver those balls.
Yeah. And I mean, you looked at like early on, just for example, like they were working this like a series where they started at the defense's 35 and they were trying to move the ball, and they weren't moving the ball well, right? Like Derek Carr even got frustrated after one of the plays, but I think that they ended up having a flag on that one and stuff. And so, I mean, there were certain things that happened where, again, you got to point and credit to the defense that they had some good moments out there today. No turnovers, so I think that's obviously a good win. And again, Derek's the starting quarterback. I know people that fake rumor. I saw a website that wrote about it, and I'm not going to call them out, but guys, y'all, if we've given career advice on here, but vet your information. But if you're going to run with something, like, do not fall for a parody account.
Please.
You have got to vet that stuff, because any credibility that site had just went out the window, right?
Yeah.
And again, that's unfortunate, but people want to believe anything these days, and that's just a hard look. But again, as far as Carr goes, I think it was a pretty strong day. I think it was a pretty good day overall for the offense. I like what I saw from Spencer Rattler at times, hooking up with Bub Means, getting his first touchdown in action, really kind of like the big one. That was a big moment for him. He's somebody I'm really looking forward to seeing against the 49ers. And I thought Jake Haener was sharp too. I think Jake Haener looked excellent today. That naked bootleg that he did.
Oh
I'm
my
not going to
goodness.
spoil it. You talk about that.
That I loved that play. So it was Jacob Kibodi lined up in the backfield, and it was Jake Haener under center. He takes the snap, rolls around, and then does this play fake to Jacob Kibodi. That at one point, I swear it's like he tucked the ball between like the nook of his waist and everything. It's almost sort of like, because I could have sworn I saw 2 empty hands at one point when he did it. But it was a fantastic play fake. Everyone collapsed into the middle of the line to try to stop Jacob Kibodi. This was what, a 3rd and 1, John, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it was 3rd and goal from the 1. That's what it was.
3rd and goal from the 1. Yeah. And then he ended up swinging around and getting to the end zone all by himself. Like, could have walked in, could have done a cartwheel in, could have danced his way in. Whatever, it was awesome. It was just, he sold that play action so well, and it fooled everybody. And he spoke about it in the press conference after, talking about how like him and Clint Kubiak saw a tendency from the defense, and so they went in. The running back didn't even know he was going to do that, all these other things, and then they ended up making it work. And so like really good stuff from that perspective too, of just like being able to identify tendencies and what's happening in these sort of controlled scrimmages, quote unquote, as Dennis Allen has called them over the course of the past couple of days, and then being able to attack those things, especially in the red zone. Like, that reminds me of that time where Alvin Kamara ran up to Sean Payton and was like, hey, when we do this, they've been doing this. So instead of the keeper, like, let's try handing it off because this is what the defense is doing. And then they came down later on in the game, they did the handoff, and then Alvin Kamara walked at the end zone. And so it's just really good stuff too. And it kind of shows you the mind of Clint Kubiak a little bit as well, that he was able to help to identify that in a practice environment where you don't have the benefit of game flow, right? Of all that information that comes from having run 40 plays against this defense already. Okay, now what do we do differently? That's not the same. You're doing 4, 5, 6, 7 plays at a time at most, and that's it. So just really, really great stuff when it comes to what we saw from that play in particular. I loved that. That was such a cool moment. And he was so hyped. He's got to be the hypest dude all the time, Jake Haener.
Yeah, his competitive spirit is something. It's something you pointed out. Okay, I'm going to go nerd on everybody.
Let's do it.
And Ross, you're gonna pick this up too. I think this team, if it makes any sense, the way they sell the play action fake from every quarterback has been way different this year. I mean, that's probably a nerd thing to look at, but I think they're doing it a much better job of creating misdirection, of creating things where the element is. Like, I think even sometimes at practice, we're like, oh, that wasn't a handoff. You know what I mean? We're trying to track the play. Like, I think that's how well they're selling it. But something you pointed out on Jake's snap, like, I don't think that's by chance that's actually happening. I feel like I've seen that, is that they are getting better at selling play action, which seems so simple. But I feel like Andrew Janocko, the guy that we talk about, he's bringing harmony to this quarterback room, right? And Jake Haener was talking about that, and using his feet. His feet are moving better under Janocko, and I think everybody's are. So it's a win-win. But are you seeing the kind of the same things I am? Join me on my nerd quest.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. And we even see the drills that back it up too, to where the team is working on those bootlegs by having the quarterbacks not just take a snap without an offensive line, without a defensive line, all this stuff. They're not just taking a snap, faking a handoff to a running back, and then throwing, and then bootlegging out and throwing the bootleg. They are instead turning around and actually handing the ball to the running back, turn around, getting a new football as they're bootlegging out, and then throwing the football. So they're literally working on, here's what this should feel like, because you're actually handing the ball off. So there's nothing, pretend going on in these drills and in the way that they're working everything quite literally to make sure that muscle memory is there. This is what it looks like when you hand a football off, which could look different than when you're not handing a football off, or when you're faking a handoff and things like that. I think it was Derek Carr early on, John, correct me if I'm wrong, that talked about how they're trying to make sure that every handoff and play action looks the same, basically. And that's part of how they're working on that. Yeah, right. That's part of what we're seeing in these situations. That's certainly what we saw from Jake Haener today, who I swear faked all of us out. Well, I think we had the advantage, John, because we were right next to where it was happening. So we kind of saw it
Sure.
all developing.
Right.
But at the moment of the mesh point, I thought he had handed the football off. And
Sure. Yeah.
so yeah, it's just been a big focus for what it is that this team has been trying to do with their offensive side. And it just shows you how much they plan on running play action, that they're putting that much focus into it. And they've seen a lot of success with it as well.
Yeah, and look, I appreciated his, and I think I said this on one of our earlier pods, and don't forget to like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. But I was pointing out, Jake, the fact that like he's been on it and studying ever since like this happened. Like he's talking about how they had 6 installs, and I think he was
Yep.
telling me that he was been working the offseason since like it ended. Like I think he might have had a brief break, but since February he's been working and working and working. And that's why he finally said, "Okay, I'm going to take a trip to France," you know what I mean, before the training camp started and all that stuff. So look, I think he's putting in some solid work, and you know, something that I want to get a couple of these, but you know, let's see. No, this was the one talking about the basic scheme. The question is basically, are we going to see the same basic type of offense during the next two preseason games? I would lean to say yes. I don't think we're going to see a lot because, and I'll give you some other things, because when we were talking to the special teams and stuff, they said they haven't even tapped into the playbook. They're just kind of doing the basics and the fundamentals. I'm pretty sure the offense is going to do the same thing, same as the defense. And so I think maybe that gives me a little bit more hope, but I expect some little wrinkles here and there. But you know, you think the same thing?
Yeah, I think you'll probably see a couple of things, but nothing too big. Like, you know, one of the things that the Saints did last week is that they still incorporated motion into some of their plays, but they didn't incorporate motion at the snap, i.e., snap the ball while a player was still actively in motion. So maybe we see a couple of those or something like that. But I think for the most part, like the Saints are really kind of into this idea of hiding a lot of what they're doing. They didn't let anybody know until very late that, you know, starters were going to play last week, even though we all knew starters were going to play last week. You know, they didn't show a lot of their offense. And I can't tell you enough. And look, you can believe me or not believe me. It's fine. I understand. I get it. But what the Saints did against the Arizona Cardinals and what they're doing in training camp could not be more different. Like
Yes.
wildly,
Yeah.
wildly different. And
Yep.
I would expect that against the San Francisco 49ers, you'll see something more close to what you saw against the Arizona Cardinals than what we've seen here in training camp. I'll say the one argument that I would make in favor of doing the other thing, which is using a little bit of your scheme, is that you lost the joint practices. But you know, you found ways, maybe the team has found ways, it sounds like, to kind of mimic those joint practices, and so they don't have to necessarily use the scheme at all.
Yeah, and shameless plugs. Check out Locked On and check out all the written work at Saints News Network or Saints on SI, because we've talked about some of the differences of what, and we've talked about it on the show, like giving you play examples of what we saw here in Cali versus what they actually rolled out. And it's just not even, they're not even tapping and scratching the surface, right? I just don't think that we've seen anything. And I don't know if they're going to tip their hand. And look, I know a team like Kansas City kind of airs it all out, but this is the way the Saints operate, is they do want to keep things close to the vest and stuff. And whether that works or not, I mean, we'll know when it's playoffs week 1, you know what I mean? And if they're in there or they're not in there, right? And I think that's the biggest thing. I want to get this funny question. Mitchell says that we're soaking up the Cali sun with a Southern California tan. Look, I tell you what, if I was in Louisiana, I'd be getting the Louisiana tan. I'd just have more sweat pouring off of me than anything. So I'd have to actually take a shower after I'm done with practice. So before a show, I thought that was funny. Yeah, Yasir brings up a good point too here. What I want to see cleaned up is the penalties. I thought there was way too many in the first half. I think they had like 8 for 50 something yards by 1 point, or 7 for 45, and then it was 8. So I definitely want to see the penalties get cleaned up for sure. It's just, that's what irks me more than anything, is that you have those mental mistakes, and those mistakes can eliminate big plays or keep the offense on the field. You just don't need that. And so this is the time where you make mistakes. I get that, but you know, it'll come full circle, hopefully. But we got a couple of weeks before that happens. And so as far as attendance goes today, let's just run it down there. Again, seeing Marshawn Lattimore off to the side doing some work. That's good to see. No A.T. Perry. Didn't see Kendre Miller today. Paulson Adebo is doing some like laps in between the field.
Yep.
Kind of just running back and forth. So that was good to see as well. No Alvin Kamara, back tightness. Now, the question got asked, I don't know where it stemmed from, but this is not contract related. Like he's not being out there because of his contract, right? I don't know where that started, where that came from for it to even be asked, but this has nothing to do with the contract, just so everybody knows. Isaiah Stallbird wasn't out there.
I think it was just about getting Dennis Allen. I think it was just about getting Dennis Allen to say that. Like, hey, this doesn't have anything to do with this contract.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. No Isaiah Stallbird, Jalen Ford, that's the hamstring. No Nick Saldiveri, Trajan Jeffcoat, and Michael Jacobson for another day. So, I mean, they're starting to get more players of being observers and stuff like that. But, again, Fuaga is the concern. They also lost Josiah Aziram, their rookie tackle today, too, from the 7th round. He went down on that Jake Haener play, and he just kind of was at the bottom of the pile. He kind of limped off, but, we'll see and keep tabs on that because he's somebody else that was going to get a good bit of reps against San Francisco and presumably the Titans. But, man, I think pivoting from here, look, we got to talk about Matt Hayball. We got to talk about special teams. We got to talk about him.
Wait, did we mention just in attendance real quick before we dip out of that?
Yes, please.
Damari.
Yeah, that was a big one.
Participating a little bit.
So yeah, he was participating in team. Like he only took like 1 or 2 snaps, I think. But he was doing that, and then I don't know if it's anything, but like he was there, and then he kind of was like observing, kind of being the rah-rah cheerleader on the side, and then he was kind of working off the side, doing some stuff by himself, and then he left the field. I don't know if that's anything, right? I just don't know, right? But that's something to keep an eye on. I in my opinion too. Maybe it was just, hey, something was amiss there. I guess I don't know, but that is something
maybe
that
or just part of the ramp up.
Could have been, but he's not got the full go yet, right? But he's building off of that, so that's I think the big takeaway. But could call out for sure. And I'm sure there's other ones like Ugo Amadi. He was making an appearance. Miller Bradford made an appearance today. Mac McCain, Mason Tipton's out there. I don't know if any of these guys are going to play, but hopefully they can get healthy and they get back to Louisiana and start practicing and then get on the field for the Titans because, like Dennis Allen said, it's going to be tough to evaluate these guys if they can't get back on the field. And unfortunate that injuries are part of the game, but it happens. But Matt Hayball, let me go back, get on that soapbox. Dude had some skyrocket punch today. And I think, let me go find the actual numbers. He had 5 of them that were 5 seconds or more. And he had 3 straight that were 5 seconds or more. And just so everybody knows, like the returners are backpedaling, that's a good sign.
Yeah,
and then we had a very interesting choice comment that I can't repeat on here from Cedric Wilson Jr. that he was like in awe, and then following that up with one of the gunners, it was JT Gray complimenting his hang time. Again, if he can get the consistency down, this might be their guy. But I was really impressed with Matt Hayball today when his punting, and Charlie Smith. He only missed 1 kick, so it was a good day for Charlie.
Yeah, he had a kick from 48. That was good in one of the drives that he did. The only one that he missed was from 44 out. Really good day from him. I think Hayball is just one of those guys where like every time that he kicks, you like look straight up into the sky.
Yeah,
and you just watch it. Like it's just so aesthetically pleasing to see. You know what I mean? And he gets so much hang time, so much distance. I wonder the evaluation of his placement and location so far, because I feel like we've seen good placement and location from him. We've seen some ones where he has boomed a punt big time for 4+, 5+ seconds, and then it goes out of bounds at the 1, everything like that. But can he do that consistently? I think is always going to be the question, of course. But man, he's been impressive, and he's making this conversation definitely worth having. Shanking punts a little bit less than like Blake Gillikin was a couple years ago and things like that as well. And of course, Gillikin just had like a fantastic year with the Cardinals. And so he's clearly improved over time. And so maybe you're hoping that Lou Hedley makes the same leap going into his next year. But Matthew Hayball is definitely, as Lou Hedley said, heating up the kitchen or the kitchen is hot or whatever it was that he said, because of how well these guys are performing in Charlie Smith and Matthew Hayball.
Yeah, and so again, we tell you we talk about special teams and stuff. It's stuff that gets us hyped up. I'm interested to see the return information, like the return team, because again, they haven't opened up the playbook and stuff like that. But
Right.
look, Hayball needs some love, right? I mean, there's when the
Yeah.
kickers and punters do well, we want to make sure to cover it, and that they get some love. But it's going to be interesting again how they work this rotation. And one of the things I told you today is I'm really interested when they get back home, like how they do
Yeah.
inside like
Right.
the Superdome, because they're going to have that Superdome practice, and how they do, it can't get a gauge on their practice facility because every single punt hits the top of the rafters, right? Like you just can't do
Right.
it. But
Yeah.
when they're outside, it's one thing, but when they get in the Superdome, that'll be another thing that they can look at for sure. What
call.
else stood out about day 17 for you? Before I got a bunch of questions, I do want to get to a few of them, but anything specific or anybody that stood out for you that we should probably talk about? I mean, I said Chase Young. I
Yeah.
thought Brian Brzee had a really solid day too. Again, he's a
Brian Brzee
guy
had a
that
really
I
good
think we're
day.
looking good. I think he's somebody that Khristian Boyd's coming back on. He's making plays. And Dennis Allen was talking about him and asking. I mean, I know you can't give a rookie like the highest praise accolades, if you will, but I think he's playing pretty well and pretty consistent. And it's not without flaw, but I think he's putting things together, and that's what you want to see. I don't think there's much else.
Yep, 100%. I asked DA about him because I'm so interested in, kind of how he's doing, because he's been. I know he's a 6th-round defensive tackle, but it feels like he's like the rookie that we talk about every single day between you and I. We're watching these plays and watching everything pan out and stuff like that. He's just constantly making plays. Talked a lot about his physical nature. Talked a lot about him being a better athlete, like a decent athlete at his size, and that's a lot of size, by the way. He's a big dude. Talked about him being like a developmental person, but not necessarily polished coming out of UNI, but the things that they wanted to see from him when they drafted him, they're seeing from him. I think Khristian Boyd, I think we've always known that Khristian Boyd is going to be on the roster. Like that's always kind of felt like the case. And look, even Dennis Allen said today, like he's a guy that we are looking forward to contributing for this team this year. And so like, I think he's going to make the roster as a 6th-round pick. That's great. But I don't know that it's ever been in question. Like he's been that good. Even as a 6th-round pick, oftentimes you talk about those guys. It's like, oh, well, yeah, they may or may not, and if they don't, it's not a big deal. I haven't had any doubts about Khristian Boyd at all. No. It's not that he's performing perfectly, right? He's got stuff to do. Dennis Allen talked about some of the technique stuff and fundamental stuff he's got to clean up and all these other things. That's to be understood, when it comes to like a 6th-round developmental guy coming out of a small program like UNI as well, which we've seen the impact that's had on Trevor Penning's leap to the NFL. And so like you're going to have that, but I've just never had a day to where I've been like, oh, Khristian Boyd might not make it. It's never felt like that, has it?
It hasn't. I mean, we've had some questions on some of the other guys. I mean, I don't question Fuaga. I don't question McKinstry. Boyd, I mean, he continuously flashes. He's getting looks with the first team. I mean, he's the guy right now that's going to be part of that rotation. And look, we've said this before, and it's, again, all respect, but Kendall Vickers, he's a veteran in this league. He could be practice squad guy. Jack Heflin, I think he's low-key had some really good moments too, but I just don't know if it's enough to edge out Khristian Boyd, because they're only going to go with 4 defensive tackles in the first place. And so again, I just think that when you look at it, Brzee's putting on some amazing stuff out there. Nathan Shepard's been doing some things as well. Colin Saunders, look, he's been getting after it too. We don't talk a lot about him. Think so as well. And then Boyd's going to be your 4th defensive tackle. I think the biggest question is, can they stop the run? Can they make sure that the run doesn't have as much success? I think we've seen some of that in training camp, but I really want to see him test their mettle, if you will. But I don't worry about him. But, again, not like we're calling people out, but like above means he's got to put it together pretty quickly, right? You know what I mean? Because guys like Samson Nakua and Kevin Austin Jr., which you've been on the Kevin Austin Jr. train a while, and so have I, but like he made some amazing plays. He had the toe drag swag play, if you called it, on the sideline. And then he had that big catch, with late in that end of game sequence that he just like went up and just got it with his hands and kind of mossed it, if you will. And he's been putting together a really good, solid camp. And so Bub
Very
means
much so.
he's behind the 8 ball, right? Like he needs
Yeah.
to get up quickly and acclimate quickly. And I don't know at this point if you don't put a Samson Nakua or Kevin Austin Jr. in there ahead of him because of what else they are able to do.
Yeah, I think right now those guys have to be ahead of him. I know that he gets a little bit of a a little bit of a pass because of the fact that he's a rookie. Or not a pass, but like, you give him a little bit more of an edge. Sorry, an edge,
Yeah.
not a pass. So he gets a little bit more of a higher starting place because of the fact that he's a drafted rookie. But I think you have to have guys like Kevin Austin and Samson Nakua ahead of him right now, just because you haven't been able to see a lot of Bud Means yet, right? He's just now coming back from injury, stuff
Yeah.
like that. So he's got time now to be able to kind of show you, hey, no, I deserve to be on this roster, all that. And that would be good because remember, for a long time, we were talking about how like no wide receiver behind Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed has really shown up. And then now all of a sudden
I remember those days.
it feels like Cedric, right? And now all of a sudden it feels like, okay, cool. Cedric Wilson, A.T. Perry, like they're set. And then now you've got this conversation of Kevin Austin, who I think every now and then I keep calling Brian Austin. I think I did that earlier today. Sorry.
You might have, but it's okay. Austin,
Samson
Massachusetts.
Yes, right. Samson Nakua and Bub Means. Now all of a sudden, like we're talking about, oh, okay, now people actually like scrapping like for a role, or scrapping for a spot and everything like that. So like this is a welcome change, that wide receiver room, I imagine.
Yeah, look, it's changed a lot. Like Kevin Austin Jr. is a guy that came in later. Same thing with Samson Nakua. And now you got Shaq Davis. Like these are guys that were brought in kind of after the fact. And so, look, I like Samson Nakua. I had a question in there if he's closer to the practice squad or 53. I don't think I'd go 53 yet, unless he like literally balls out. But I think his work ethic, his attitude, it's everything that any team would want to have. Like 31 teams would love to have a Samson Nakua guy on their roster, whether it's practice squad or 53. But the way he's playing, man, I think he's somebody to just keep tabs on. I think he's got practice squad potential for sure. But at the 53, I'm not ready to go there yet because putting together 53-man rosters it's a thing, right? But there's so many moving parts and pieces that we don't typically think about, like, oh, there's injuries or the pup, how they're going to use this IR rule and all these other different things. And so, look, I think he's doing well. I think he's making the most of it. He's playing special teams. He's in the return game. He's playing kick coverage. So punt team, playing at gunner. So he's doing everything he needs to do to help his case. Same thing with Kevin Austin Jr. And I think we talked about this on Wednesday's show. I had to check the date because I just kind of ran together for me. But we talked about him and somebody like him over a Stanley Morgan Jr. who had a slow start and hasn't got out here as much. But I mean, again, I think he might edge out Stanley Morgan Jr. And so we've got a lot of football left to play, but it's a good problem to have, seeing that competition at the wide receiver room. And that, like Dennis Allen said, we're not running a charity organization, but they're not just going to hand somebody the role just because of who you are. And I think that's a case for Equanimeous St. Brown. Like he's still not being able to get out there and team. He finally shed the red non-contact jersey. Like you said as well, that Kevin Austin Jr. has some of those abilities to block like Equanimeous St. Brown. So it's going to be fascinating. I really want to see more of this wide receiving core, regardless of who plays quarterback.
Yeah, same. I completely agree. I can't wait to see him Sunday up against San Francisco. It'll be interesting to see them in that thing. And remember too, one of the things that Dennis Allen said about Kevin Austin was that Kevin Austin had to play, he said, a kind of a bunch of different positions for them. They had to move him around a lot. And so he was like, so I think some of the wires got crossed for him. So I'm curious to see if that improves up against San Francisco, or if he just gets to play a little bit more of like his role as an X receiver. I asked him straight up, like, where do you consider yourself strongest? And he mentioned being an X receiver. So I'll be interested to see if maybe he gets more of those opportunities on Sunday's game.
Yeah. All right. Let's get to some of these questions as we wind down here. Thank you for putting them in there again. Appreciate all your support. Don't forget to like, subscribe. You guys have been amazing. Terrific. I bring this one up. It's not more of a question, it's more of a statement, but talking about finding the tackle. And we've talked about this on past episodes. You can go back to our shows. We do the bookmarks and chapters, so you can go straight to what you want to look at. You know what I mean? But watch all the show because it's if we got a thing or two that we can talk about. But James Hurst, I had this conversation with somebody else, a reporter today. He's like, look, I think if I'm the Saints, he's obviously accepted the broadcast role, but if he stayed in any kind of shape or anything like this might be the time you try to reach out to James Hurst. But I also bring up a guy like Cam Irving. I know it's not necessarily the desired outcome, but you're going to need to keep some people close, right? You know what I mean? And does a Cam Irving fit this offensive scheme that you're trying to do? I don't know. Can he learn the playbook? Yeah, he's a veteran. He can learn. He can do some things. But, I don't know if you use the rest of the cap, but you're going to have a list of players ready to go that you need to really hone in on. And you'd be silly not to make at least a few calls there for sure.
Yeah. Yep. 100%. 100%. I completely agree.
Shout out to Steve. He's in Melbourne, tuning in. And yes, wow. Cam Jordan is super slim. He's slimmed down completely. I want to take this question real, not in the context it's presented, but the offensive tackles. If Penning's still the starter, we've talked about Landon Young, Oli Udoh a little bit. Those are kind of the other guys that are playing there, and I don't think it's that they've been bad. I just don't know if they've done anything better than Trevor Penning. You know what I'm saying? And I know that probably sounds bad, but I haven't been impressed with Oli Udoh's camp. What about you?
Yeah, this has been one of the other kind of compounding issues at right tackle is that not only has Trevor Penning struggled, but none of the other guys have really stepped up and snatched that role away from him while he's struggling. I think Oli Udoh, too, has been put on the interior a lot more than is necessary. I don't know what this is. I know that this happened in Minnesota as well to Oli. So maybe this is just where the NFL kind of projects him or whatever. But maybe with more time at right tackle, more kind of specifically, or uniquely, then maybe his play improves or something like that. But no, I think it's equally concerning, not just that Trevor Penning has struggled at right tackle, but that no other right tackle has stepped up. And I wonder how different this conversation is if Justin Herron doesn't get hurt. Justin Herron, I think we forget about a lot because of the fact that because he got injured so early. But he was an NFL right tackle with a lot of NFL right tackle starting experience and playing experience. And I wonder how much, particularly going back to his Raiders days beyond his Patriots days, or vice versa. I can't remember which order that goes.
His Patriots, then Raiders.
Patriots and Raiders. Yeah. Okay. So going back to his Patriots days, you could see he got a lot of starting experience, got a lot of opportunities out there. And so I think the thing around that right tackle spot is I wonder how different it would be if Herron were out there and if he would be the guy to maybe challenge Trevor Penning a little bit more. But what we've seen is Trevor Penning taking a lot of those first team reps, not a lot of other guys really moving up into those first team reps. I think that's pretty indicative of no one's played well enough at the position to kind of challenge him there. And so then in that case, what do? Right? Do you just artificially generate that competition and stick them in there? Or do you just keep giving Trevor Penning reps when that's been the big thing this whole time is Trevor Penning hasn't gotten enough reps. He hasn't gotten enough reps. Okay, we'll give him the reps. And that's what the Saints are doing. So we'll see. I don't think time's run out, but I think that time is of the essence. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, here's a good follow-up question from John Butler. Shout out to you. Does this offensive system forgive a lot of Sims for subpar pass protection? Does the pass protection need to be as crisp if you are presumably getting the ball out, using misdirection, all that stuff? I mean, you still got to protect, but what do you think with this Kubiak offense?
Yeah, this is always tough because I don't want to make it sound like I'm talking bad about the system, but you look at last year, DVOA wise, on first and second downs, the Saints were amongst the top 10 in the NFL when it came to protection for Derek Carr. But then they were 21st in the NFL when it came to third and fourth down. So late down stuff. Why? Yeah. There's no play action on third down. There's no scheme that's going to save you on 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, 3rd and 10 plus. And so for me, that's the biggest issue is, the system could probably help out in some of those situations for sure. Play action, bootleg, move the pocket, get the quarterback off, get the offensive line working off the football, things like that. That's great on first and second down, but you need to be able to convert third downs. You need to be able to move the ball down the field. And sometimes you need a play to develop downfield. And so your offensive line has to be able to hold up. Yeah. And so that's my concern, is that the scheme could take you so far, but after a certain point, you just have to be good. You got to be good enough. And I think that's where the bigger concerns really stem from. The other thing that I'll say too, though, is that what we don't get to see in practice is the value of game flow, because like we just said a second ago, you're taking 5, 6, 7 snaps in a row at most. And you're not going up against the same defense. You're probably rotating offensive pieces off, all these other things. It's a very different game when you've run the ball successfully for 40 snaps and then decide, okay, let's drop back to pass, even without a play action. Drop back to pass on 1st and 10 from the plus 40, right? The defense is 40. All of a sudden, maybe the defensive line isn't rushing as aggressively because they're expecting, and they're on their heels because of how much they've given up in the run game and stuff like that. So we don't get to see that advantage of the scheme in training camps, and we won't see that advantage of the scheme until the regular season starts. So I'll give it a little bit of credit there, but you still got to be better than the guy in front of you on 3rd downs when necessary.
No, I completely agree. I mean, you just have to. You got to hold up in protection, especially when you need it. It's some of the quarterbacks, they get that last half second they need to make something big happen. I mean, that comes from the pass protection. And look, I've seen all 3 quarterbacks be able to kind of stand in there in the pocket and to be able to pull the trigger at the last second and make those plays, which I think is an encouraging sign. It hasn't always been like, oh, this is not there, it's a sack. You know what I mean? They have had some moments there. So we'll see. We'll get a couple of rapid fire ones before we do get out of here. Saratobi asks about A.T. Perry, seeing him again this preseason. Again, it depends on the severity of his ankle sprain or his ankle injury, I guess, if you will. And so I think he needs to play a little bit more. You know what I mean? Like, I think what we've seen is encouraging, but he's also can't hurry back from this ankle injury because that would be not good. So any thoughts on A.T.? Do you think he's
No, I agree with you on that.
Gotcha.
I agree with you.
Good deal. All right. Let me think. I know, man, just other rapid fires. Bakhtiari, we've given our thoughts on that. If you bring him in, that, where do you put him? Because he's left tackle is Fuaga. You're not going to put him on the right tackle. I think that was a couple episodes we talked about what our thought process was, at least. I'm not saying we're right, but I mean, can Bakhtiari play right tackle? I mean, I don't know. Can he? You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. And can he stay healthy too? Is the other question, right? Like, maybe even if he can play right tackle, do you get more than 3 games out of him before you got to go right back to where you were in the first place anyway?
Exactly. Yep. And then another question about Kendre and Saldivari, miss more time. Yeah, that I think so. I think they're risk of getting cut now, unless Kendre's injury is something that just can't let him get on the field. Like if it's something more going on with the hamstring, or like Saldivari's more going on with his calf, then yeah, maybe they are and you brought this up, like they could get we'll put you on the roster, but we're going to put you on an IR situation, which would suck if somebody else is there that deserves a spot or whatever. But that's
why that new rule is helpful, where you can put 2 players on injured reserve at roster cuts without having to move them to your active roster first. I would look at Kendre Miller and Nick Saldivari as like perfect candidates for that if neither of them participate in the preseason.
Yeah, for sure. And then let's get this one last about Spencer off the bench first or Jake get first on. I think based off everything we said this the other day, I think it's Spencer, right? Because he was back up today. And if it's a rotation approach, Jake will be quarterback 2 tomorrow, which is Friday's practice. And then presumably for the game, it would be Rattler's turn to be up. But I mean, I think that based off what we saw in some other areas, that's probably an easy one for sure. Man, Ross, time flies as always. Anything else that you want to discuss or talk about or plug? Obviously, Louisiana sports is coming a couple days.
Yep.
Is everything on track?
Yep, everything's on track.
And for those who don't know, what is the website?
Yeah, LouisianaSports.net. So I just got hired over there to be the Saints beat reporter, or beat writer, excuse me. And so we will get started with producing content on Sunday during the game against San Francisco 49ers. So make sure you bookmark LouisianaSports.net, come through, and it will be live on Sunday with all that stuff. So very exciting stuff. What you got coming up?
Oh man, I'm just training camp grime, dude. You know this, that, and this show. That's what we got going on. So
that's how we roll.
Just keep working on that, and trying to work on a couple of features that I'm getting some intel for. So stay tuned for that.
That's good.
I lied about the
great
last question. 53-man roster cut. I think it's August 27th, 3 p.m. deadline. That's when they go from 90 to 53. So you'll probably start seeing some of them after the third preseason game. Like they're going to know pretty early who's not going to be there. They're going to make those cuts, but those last few ones are going to be hard and interesting. But August 27th, that's the date. Cool. All right, guys. Well, again, appreciate you tuning in to another episode of Second and Saints. Again, don't forget to like, subscribe. We got all our links in the bios and all that stuff. Please support us in that way. We're not trying to do like premium subscriptions and Patreons and all that stuff, but we're just here for you guys, and we want to continue to grow and all that other stuff. I think Ross and I just continue to love doing this for Saints fans and look, we just want to continue to pay it forward and such. And so if you guys know sponsorship opportunities, obviously hit us up too. We shout out to FOCO. They've been fantastic to us too so far this training camp, but season's coming up and all that stuff. But that's really going to do it for us today. We got one more practice on Friday, and then we're going to have San Francisco, the preseason game. Then we're going back to Louisiana. Ross, are you excited? I know Jake Haener was excited. And even though Mike Haas said, hey, it's 118 back home. I was like, I don't think he's excited. Can't backpedal on that one now. So, But anyways, that's going to do it for us today. On behalf of Ross Jackson, John Hendricks signing out. Make sure to follow us and like, subscribe. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you.